as I tell the story, I suppose the issue for me is I haven't got a leg turn. I'm used to going to assembly and having a leg turn for security. As I pointed out the other day, I went to assembly and put my notes down on the leg turn. Some kind person removed the little ledge at the bottom. So okay, I'll start by talking a little bit about me, just so you get a bit of an idea. I attended Auckland College when I was 11. My family moved to 364 Massey Road when my father bought the local IGA store. And coming from Tokoroa, that was a pretty nerve-wracking experience, I'll tell you. But being a good family man, I went with them. I went to Aotearoa, and from there I went to Auckland University, and then I did teacher training. That wouldn't have been the case if I'd been taller, because I actually wanted to be a policeman. And I didn't make the grade on that, and then I was going to be a primary school teacher, and I didn't make the grade for that either because applications had closed the week before. So I ended up at ACE becoming a secondary school teacher, and on the first day I arrived and they said, well, we don't know what you're going to teach. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you've got an economics degree and people don't turn up here with economics degrees. And they said, well, and don't be insulted by this. They said, well, would you like to teach social studies? And I said, well, I'm not teaching structured gossip. And, someone said, well, what about maths? And I said, oh, that sounds pretty good, so we'll get on with it. So I became a maths teacher. Now I did 20 years at Aotearoa, and then I went to Papakura High School as a principal and worked in a school which was becoming largely Māori. Then I went to Tuakau as principal, and I spent 5 very pleasant years in the country. Much colder place than it is up here, especially on mornings like the other day when we had a frost. If you had a frost here, it was always a humdinger when you got to Tuakau. And that was a wonderful place, and I got a lot of enjoyment and a lot of really good interaction with the Māori community, and things were going pretty good. But I'd always wanted to be principal of a large state co-ed school, and so I applied for the job at Otahuhu, and I ended up back on Mangere Road where, Massey Road is just an extension of that. And I'd been there when I was 11, and I was back there 8.5 years ago. And so as I always tell people, I've got the best job in New Zealand, and some people look at me and think I'm an idiot. And I would also point out I'm not what I call a decile creep. A lot of principals get principals' jobs in lower decile schools and work that way. I've been working the other way. And so I'm down to 1C. We were 1B, but the census moved us up to 1B and cut 120k out of our funding. That's another story. So I spent the whole of my teaching career pretty heavily involved in education, where socioeconomic conditions play a pretty heavy part of that. Otahuhu is the largest decile 1 school in the country. We've currently got the second largest one. It was the largest. James Cook High School is the largest one. And it used to be run by my chemistry teacher from Māori, but he's just retired. So there's always little tie-ups in education. So we've got a roll at the moment of probably 1,320, and now of course you get less funding as the year goes on in secondary schools because we get quarterly funding, and so as our roll goes down, they give us less money. But we still have to have the lights on in every classroom and heat every classroom, and still have the lady working the same number of hours in the front office, and the caretakers and the cleaners and all those things. But in their infinite wisdom, they came up with a little model which said we can save, 20 or 30 million, so we'll reduce how we fund schools that way. So they just slowly worked it back. So I don't know what it costs us, probably 30, 40k a year we lose now because our roll drops slightly. I think it's pathetic, but never mind. We have about 1,000 Pacifica students, and we're decile 1. So according to that demograph, I would argue that we should be causing the Ministry of Education more grief than just about any school in the country. That's not the case. And that comes about for a number of reasons, and I think one of the most important ones is we offer a full wraparound service for our kids to deal with some of the socio-economic issues that they bring to the school. So we have 2 full-time nurse equivalents working in the health centre. We have a doctor 15 hours a week. We have 2 social workers, 2 guidance counsellors, community liaison person, a gateway coordinator, and a shared campus cop. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of all the bits and pieces that go together. And then we've got all these teachers as well. Okay, all of this is working pretty well. In my first year at Otahuhu, 14 kids got told that they weren't welcome there anymore, either excluded or expelled. Last year we were down, last year it was 6, but the previous 2 years to that it had been 2 per year, and this year we've only excluded 3 kids. The interesting stat amongst that is, the group that is at the top of all the stats, Māori students, there hasn't been one excluded or expelled from Otahuhu College in the last 5 years. And I'm pretty proud of that statistic, and you know, we're trying to do our bit. Unfortunately, there are other issues around Māori students which we can't address, and transients and keeping them in school is a little more difficult. To give you an idea about what we work our way through, I had to do a speech at another forum a year or 2 ago, and I went down to the health centre and I said to the nurse, have you been doing any heads assessments? Because every Year 9 student who arrives at our school gets a heads assessment, and I can never remember what the heads bit stands for. But they have 30 to 40 minutes with either a nurse or a social worker, and they get to talk through, you know, about home and you know, and all their health issues and any educational issues and all that stuff. And for some kids, it's the first time they've ever sat and talked to an adult for that length of time. She'd just done 27. They've just done 27 interviews, and here's what 14 of them uncovered. First one, mum in Fiji. Second one, mum home sick with epilepsy. 3, student failed the hearing test and is morbidly obese. 4, moved to New Zealand, dad died, the older brother stays home to look after the sick granny. 5, sleeps in the garage with grandparents, cousin and auntie, parents are overseas. 6, dad's home on dialysis. 7, infected leg, family unable to go back to the doctor, can't afford the prescription costs. 8, mum made redundant 2 months ago, dad lost his job, they've usually run out of food by the weekend. 9, dad died in 07. 10, failed the vision test for both eyes and actually legally blind in one eye. 11, cousin with uncontrolled schizophrenia has just moved in. 12, mum has a new baby, dad's lost his job. 13, parents not working. 14, parents not working. So that was out of it, just a random pick of the 27 that they just completed. Okay. What else does it, what does it show? The general overview of all HECS assessments shows larger groups of people in one house, increase in strep throats, which leads to rheumatic fever, which we all know is a third world disease, less physical and sexual abuse apparently, but increased marijuana use, people trying to escape, I suppose. Across all kids, nutrition issues because parents are working, they have to get their own meals. In the past we've had students with no fridge at home because it's either been repossessed or sold in garage sale. There's also been an increase in mental health issues and suicidality. We run free breakfasts twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. One boy turns up and he can eat 15 wheat bix, so it's not a bad effort. He also plays in the first 15 and in the league team as well. Across the community from Youth 2007, which has just been done at the moment, this was done across the country by Auckland University's Department of Medical and Health Science, we get the following for Pacifica students. 22% moved house 2 or more times in the last year compared with 8% for European. 6% of parents are worried about money for food. 18% are in crowded homes compared with Europeans 1%. And so it goes on. Perhaps a specific case study brings it home to roost. This young lady joined us in 2009 at Year 9 and she was 13 years old. She'd had rheumatic fever in 08 and has had major heart surgery. Testing reveals that she's very capable of maths. She's placed in the accelerate class, got involved in a cultural group, Waka Armour and the SWAT team. That's the students with attitude team. HECS assessment revealed suicidal intentions, terrible home life and a toxic relationship with mum. Year 10, attendance issues developed, truancy letter sent out, no response, and we discovered, they've moved out of the area. She continues to excel in class, now plays hockey, is learning a musical instrument, but then SIFs contact us to ask us if we have any concerns. Yes, we do. The brother beat her up in April, black eye and bruising. Social worker follows this up, brother now in jail. More suicidal thoughts, so we now have a safety plan in place for her and hope that she'll be able to go on and live with her auntie, and she's still at school with us and still progressing, so that's good to know. Checked with the health centre manager, and she said the other day they'd just done an assessment where a boy was referred by a staff member because they were having a bit of trouble with him, Year 9 boy, not going that well in class, and generally unhappy, so can you push him up the HECS assessment list? They did. He's one of 15 people living in a 2-bedroom unit. He has constant colds and periodic deafness. Comes as a wee surprise, wouldn't it? Right? 15 people in a 2-bedroom place. Okay? So, that gives you a little bit of an idea of the downside we have to deal with. So therefore, what I would say to you, along with a lot of other people, is we shouldn't be asking the question, why are our students failing in the schools, but instead, why are so many succeeding despite their backgrounds and what they bring to school? there is a truckload of good news out there right across South Auckland. When I go to senior assembly on a Monday, which is year 11, 12 and 13, I see a sea of brown faces full of hope and pride. I see the future of New Zealand. I see potential doctors, lawyers, accountants, builders, teachers, factory workers, truck drivers, even politicians. That's it. Last year at Otahuhu College, 45 students got UE, the minimum qualification necessary to gain entrance to an Auckland university, to a New Zealand university. The AIM High Schools, the collective of Otahuhu, Tamaki, Macaulay, Sir Edmund Hillary, Tangaroa, Southern Cross, Mangere, Dillasole and Aldery, are all Decile 1 except for AO, it's Decile 2, but they're all predominantly Pacifica. And the gap between us and national averages has closed considerably. At NZEI levels 1, 2 and 3, the gap has closed 27, 25 and 29% since 2005. We've improved our NZEI literacy and numeracy rates, although numeracy took a real hit in 2011 because NZQA changed the assessment criteria. We told them it would impact, and it did. It dropped something like 7%. I think mine managed to stay about the same, but they dropped about 7%. Another really good statistic for us, though, centres around retention from year 11 to 13. From 2007 to 2011, average retention in Decile 1 schools went from 48.6% to 60.5%, an increase of 24.5%. In the case of Otahuhu, it went from 60 to 81.3, an increase of 35%, and that's something that I'm pretty proud of. Unfortunately, although this means the students leave with qualifications, it's often a year later. The bottom line is our students arrive at secondary school 18 months behind where they should be in many cases, so we're playing catch up. Now, I'm not looking to blame the people before me, so don't get me wrong. They start primary school behind the 8 ball. That's the reality of the situation. So why don't we sort out the preschool issue first, and then we could come back to secondary schools 11 years later. Isn't that a long time? That's 3 parliamentary terms. But you see, they only work on little wee chunks. And sometimes I think it's about little chunks of a year, but anyway, we won't get into that too much. But they can come back in 11 years' time and they can be as critical as they like of my level 1 results. My level 1 results weren't too good last year, but the level 2 and 3 will be much better this year, and we'll see that happen as the kids work their way through. A little more about AIM High. It started in the late 90s. It was an MOE initiative, which is now self-funding because the ministry is very good at starting things. They provide the seed money, but they're not too hot on sustainability. So we meet monthly as a group of principals and discuss the issues we face. And we constantly look for new and innovative ways to improve the levels of academic achievement for our students. As a cluster, we work together very strongly. We don't compete with one another. We have a part-time coordinator for which the schools fund, not the ministry. We share best practice and we work together cooperatively, not competitively, except when we're on the sports field or a body fest. We are all very, very familiar with the research from John Hattie at Auckland University, so we don't operate at the anecdotal, oh, I've got a good idea, or the sample of one level that politicians seem to with education. The other level currently being operated at for education is the poll-driven one, which I presume is why there was extra money put into truancy. Governments look good if they're tough on truants, so they throw a bit more money at it, even if it means you have no idea how it's going to be spent, and if the current system for dealing with truants is giving you value for money, you just change it and throw money at it and get publicity and it looks good and people vote for you. Another little gem that's bound to come up shortly, I'm sure, is soon to be, be the abolition of zoning, to give parents choice. When all this does is give schools choice and leaves low decile schools I call it asset stripping, to use the business term. What they do then is they take your best academic, cultural and sporting kids, and you're left to run a school with no student leaders, no academic role models and no stars for cultural groups and sporting teams. So when I hear a high decile school complain about zoning, it usually means the first 15 struggling and they need a few Pacifica and Maori boys. I once got told by a DP at a Decile 10 school that he didn't know why brown boys came to his school. I just walked away. I wrote to Heather Roy a few years ago when those scholarships for students to attend high decile schools were first announced. They're called Aspire scholarships. And I suggested that scholarships for students at high decile schools to attend low decile schools would be of far more benefit to the nation. The concept of the charter school, I probably can't let that go sliding by, can I? Having listened to many people talk on the subject, I can't see any educational logic for their introduction, only a politically ideological one. From my point of view, it looks like an attempt to break down the collective employment agreement, especially when you say they don't have to have registered teachers. We already have many charter schools all around the place. For example, at Otahuhu College, we've put into place a health science academy for students interested in working in the health field when they leave school. So what we've done is we've gone out and we've said, what might these kids going to be? They might become doctors, nurses, physiotherapists, dentists, pharmacists, occupational therapists, who knows what, and we've worked backwards from there. So if they're doing that, they need to do this at university. And if they're going to do that at university, what do they need to do at school? So we started last year with them in year 11, and they did 1/3 of their timetable was science, because one of the things that you need if you're going to do health is you're going to do science. I get really grumpy when the university says to me, you're not doing the job. People turn up, they want to become a doctor at university, and they've turned up to enrolment and they haven't done year 11 science. And my answer to that now is they must be pretty thick then, and I don't think they'll pass the medical course, because if you didn't know you needed to do science if you were going to become a doctor, there's a bit of a disconnect there which I don't think will ever buy the class. Now, the interesting thing is this is externally funded, and I get considerable assistance from the Pacifica Medical Association. There are, and we also have a few others. We've got a service academy, which is funded by the Ministry, sports academy, and a special performing arts program at year 11. Now, the health science one's really interesting. I can take you to, on Monday, I can take you to a level 2, sixth form physics class, and there's 18 Pacific Island girls sitting in that classroom, and that's pretty unique. The only place you might possibly replicate that is at Tangaroa and James Cook, and they're all decile 1. Okay, you can't replicate that number of Pacific Island girls taking physics, I don't reckon, at any school. Not the high decile schools that many of the girls go to. It's not the case at all. Okay, so we're making we're into our second year. We've got stunning results at level 1. We've got science external standards where kids were better than the national average. One boy got 90 level 1 excellence credits. 10, if you get 80, you get a grade point average of 320, and he coped really well. Some say charter schools give choice. My question is, what choice? Sorry, it's the product of working in decile 1 school. At Otahuhu this year, students have had the opportunity to learn one of a number of musical instruments, play in a band, play a range of different sports, compete at national championships, play in the top first 15 grade and front up against Kings, Grammar, Mags, St Kents, etc. This year we came second in the National Rugby League Championship. We didn't play in the also run grade, which one school took much pride in winning. We won that title. We won that title last year, and one of our boys has gone on to, in the last 5 games of the round robin, started for the Sydney Roosters in the NRL, not the Toyota Cup, in the NRL. Had a full contract with them. He's also attending Sydney University and training to be a teacher at the same time. He took full part in school production. He was deputy head boy, he captained the first 15, the first 13. He played for New Zealand secondary schools at rugby. Just a wonderful young man. Students can take part in the school production, and it ranges from Shakespeare to musicals. We did that thing, was it the high school musical? They can go to the school ball and have a wonderful time. We had the most amazing school ball this year. The kids were wonderful, all dressed up, God knows how much some of it had cost them. Some of them had made the girls had made their dresses at school in the fabric technology classes. Wonderful. All the things that kids can do in a high decile school. And after all of last year's successes, we got 2 scholarships, one in art and one in Samoan. That's the first one since about 2004. This year we've got students entering scholarship in English, Samoan, art, dance, accounting and calculus. In external exams, we have standards where we have pass rates for Pacifica students above the national Pacifica average. In art, biochemistry, classics, English, health, calculus, painting, physics, visual arts. For single subject endorsements at level 3 for Pacifica students, we got more than 6 other higher decile schools in Auckland combined. And our kids progress. They don't just get a whole lot of them at level 1, they keep getting them at level 2 and level 3. And in fact, and I discussed this with John Minto before, for NZEI Year 13 high achievers in Metro magazine, we ranked 4th. And I was happy to accept the honour, but not at all convinced about the statistics that lay behind the ranking, because they're rubbish. Right? But when you come 4th in something that's spread across the city, you put a big tick in it. Okay? So, Because next year, you've got to enjoy it, because next year you might be 81st. So what I'm saying is the standard of teaching in our schools across South Auckland in most subject areas is actually stunningly good. And if you looked at value added, we would bury most high decile schools. I have a wee plan for education in South Auckland, and it begins with let us sort out the preschool situation first. Let's have all our little ones starting school on a level playing field. Let's resource schools properly, accentuate the positive wherever possible, and let principals get on with managing their schools. We know there are some things that work in the secondary school system. For example, Star Path, a program being run through Auckland University, being run across a whole raft of schools in Auckland now. It involves three-way conferencing, academic mentoring and goal setting. The university can already show through research that this program is working. We're getting a significant lift in achievement, so I'm looking forward to my results in January because it's the first time it's impacted on my kids at year 11. The trouble is it costs. So luckily this year I had two sources of outside funding to pay the extra 20k that it costs to run something like this. We had an 88% turnout at our three-way conferencing last term, which was more than double what we'd ever been able to get to report night. And that's touch and base with a hell of a lot of families. That's a kid, a parent and a teacher. And then a 20-minute, going through how little Sioni's progressing or how he's not progressing and what we might be able to do to help this. Anything that improves the relationship between families and schools helps. The same with the Health Science Academy. It costs, as I said, but outside funding is covered the shortfall. Gateway is another program that works stunningly well. It gives students experience in the workplace. This is centrally funding, but even then you end up subsidising. We've got 100 places on Gateway, but I reckon we could fill 150 without even trying. Last year, 7 of our Gateway students, and it doesn't sound like very many, but it's huge, 7 of them got apprenticeships. And for us that was just an absolutely stunning outcome because most places no one would have got them, but 7 of them through the Gateway program ended up with apprenticeships. And so there are some really good things happening and they need to be pushed and given more funding. The other thing that needs to happen is the government and the media need to stop thrashing South Auckland. If something it's interesting, if something negative happens now, did you know that Otahuhu was part of South Auckland? if something terrible happens in Otahuhu, it's all of a sudden Otahuhu is part of South Auckland. I've never really thought of Otahuhu as South Auckland. Maybe my geography's not too good. And this is where I get a bit naughty. Let's remember that crime's not the preserve of South Auckland. Not many people from South Auckland are appearing in court as the finance company meltdowns continue. Thousands of people have seen their life savings disappear and very few people have been made accountable. If you have enough money, you can even run people a bit over and be held up as a fine citizen. Is that how the free market's supposed to operate? Do we associate this problem with a particular geographical part of the city or just a street called Paratai Drive? So, you have to save a bit of money somewhere. So where do you go for efficiencies? Well, I suppose how many bodies do you need involved in education? Do we really need TEC, MOE, NZEI and ERO? Perhaps we could combine them all into one entity with one CEO and call it the Department of Education, and that would free up 3 salaries. How do I make my life easier? And anyone here from the PPDA? Simplify the collective employment contract, especially around some things such as extra remuneration for staff who are doing extra things, around MUs, MMAs and SMAs. We have a ludicrous situation where these get allocated, some of them have to be permanent, but the trouble is for those 3 things, MUs, MMAs and SMAs, it's 40%, 30% and 50%. So there's no logic in it, it's obviously just random number generation. It's no wonder that the contract fills 107 pages and is fertile ground for interpretation and then litigation. Principals would love it if the MOE and the PPDA signed off contracts that they both had the same interpretation of and that the contract was resourced properly. Can I stress, I want the collective, because I think it's critical, but in a simpler form and with a little more trust of principals. The bottom line is, if you get a reputation as a bad employer and a prat, people don't want to work for you, and so you won't attract good teachers. So if we've got some ideas on research, can we guarantee, we can almost certainly guarantee that any idea we have has been tried somewhere else, in which case we can go away and look at the research. We should all have to read John Hattie's book, Visible Learning, and take note of its findings. I do have to make a little comment on national standards, and hear the whole paragraph. Don't jump all over me at the beginning. There will be 2 good things that may come out of them. That will surprise you. And one of them is parents will get information about their little darlings that isn't gobbledygook. I have a report sitting on my desk, which I should have brought with me, that I would have identified the school, with 6 different types of measure in it for the parents. It included the beep test result, it included ASTEL results, so you got the 3P4A, it had some stuff reported in stain irons, but the highlight for me was the result for science, which was given as a percentage. And the other thing that's happened as a result of national standards is we have had a huge discussion about education, and I think it's certainly raised awareness of assessment and awareness of learning in households across the country, and that's not a bad thing, particularly around assessment. However, I think labelling kids' failures at 6 and producing league tables do absolutely nothing to enhance or improve educational outcomes. Why is it so difficult to tell parents what their sons and daughters can do, what they can't do, and what they need to do to improve? Because that's all reporting has to be about, right? So, finally, my plea to everyone is approach education in a planned, systematic, research-based way. Get all those involved working to a common goal, and don't just cherry-pick the easy bits. Now, if you've got any questions, I'll answer them.